When I was a teenager, my dad bought me a classic 1972 Ford Bronco. It was my true passion, and I don't recall a memory from high school that somehow doesn't involve that truck. Plus, my dad and I would spend hours and hours working on it together, and we went through that especially father/son rough patch. When I was teenager, it was always that Bronco that brought us back together. I made a huge mistake and sold the truck when I turned 19, and my dad died of a heart attack 2 months later, so while not logical, I've always felt a karmic connection between the two events. We had a baby in early February. She is our first and the light of my life. My wife is doing well, but she's back at work and she's realized that she hates all the daycares we've tried and really wants to be a stay-at-home mom, and plus she's still very hormonal from delivery. Lack of sleep and breastfeeding, so she's having a rough time and is angry a lot. I guess I need to say this. 2 weeks ago I was driving through our town's warehouse district and saw a Bronco that was pretty beat up but resembled mine. I stopped just for nostalgia's sake, and the owner came out and let me take a look inside. My dad and I had glued a wheat penny under the dash as sort of security measure, so I just sort of checked, and goddamned if it wasn't my Bronco. I asked him if he'd ever consider selling it. He said actually someone was on I-25 as we spoke from Colorado to buy it for $21,000. I freaked out and asked him if I could buy it right then and there for $23,000. He said if I could come up with the cash, yes. I had been procrastinating setting up a 529, so I had $12,000 in savings that my wife's parents had given us. I maxed out my credit card to Venmo, and my mom bought down a check for $4,000, and I drove away in my old car. It was like a dream come true. Like a literal dream come true. It needs a lot of work I can't afford right now, but it's mine. Like in my driveway, mine. Again. I can't even describe what a joy this is. My wife and her parents are furious with me. They feel I was deceptive, that a real man would have sacrificed anything and everything so my wife could go stay at home with his kids, and that's setting aside that they gave us the money for a college fund. My point is, my daughter is only 6 months old. We have 18 years to set up a college fund of her. But this Bronco means everything to me, and if I wouldn't have acted, it would have been gone forever. Now it can be that same connection between me and my kids. To me, it's the literal meaning of happiness. I talked with my mom, and she is basically going to buy the Bronco from me in order to refill the college fund and pay off the credit card. The $4,000 will be a gift, and she's going to give me whatever I need to restore it. She's always been awesome to me, and she's rather the money be spent now than wait for me and my sister's inheritance. I didn't tell my wife that my mom bailed me out and lied and said I found a buyer for the Bronco. I'll figure out how to cross that bridge when I get there, but my wife was so relieved that I had come to your senses. I don't want to disappoint her. It's going to take all my lying skills to pull this one off over the next few years. I have a friend from high school who has a teenage daughter that recently started having fainting spells. I remembered that my nephew had this issue as a child and texted in Messenger to ask my older sister about what they found out about him and if it sounded like my friend's daughter. I asked via text because she is pretty busy. She answered that he still has it and it's a condition he has with anxiety and it overwhelms his heart sometimes. An hour or so later she started talking, again, via text, about how her son and daughter, both young adults now, are mentally handicapped and have psychotic episodes. Saying that the daughter totally made up the flea issue they had in their house and her mental issues caused her to break out in hives. This made me confused as I've been with her kids and even took my niece on vacation with us so she could ride the slides with my husband. Not my thing anymore, and she was perfectly fine. Well, an hour later my sister texted me saying all of that was not her. After she had told me about her son's anxiety issue, she had went to work and her husband. Yes, her husband had pretended to be her and even Googled all this BS up. I already had issues with her husband. He has lied and has had other issues before. To say I was angry is an understatement. Her husband, who is not her children's father, was bad-mouthing and telling me her kids are mentally unstable. Carl already has a past of being like this to her kids, and my sister went along with it. I told her, that was it. I'm done. I went no contact for the past month, although I kept in touch with the kids. She has a younger son, age 15, and he does not get along with her husband, either. I told the elder too what he had said, so they had a heads up. My sister defended him initially but apologized 2 days ago. I told her that her husband needs to apologize for himself, though. He is a grown man. Until then, my kids and husband will not be attending anything outside of holidays at my mom's house, their neighbors. My mom can visit or I can visit her, but my kids will have nothing to do with her husband. Even after the apology, he will not be family to me or mine. He is deeply homophobic, drunk every time we visit, and racist. He is the reason my sister is not someone I want to raising my kids if something happened to us. My mom told me I should let it go, because family, but my husband backs me 100%. He claims he thought I knew it was him because they share a FB account. He was looking at other women's accounts and talking to them. So my sister insisted they share an account so he would not do that. Even if it were him not pretending to be my sister. He was spreading lies about 2 people I care for deeply. My graduation ceremony is being held next week. My dad had given me some money in advance to pay for the party. I live mostly with my mom, but they were supposed to be hosting the event together. Dad and I have a rocky relationship. After my parents divorced when I was 4, they split custody of me and he was able to stay a good dad. When I was 10, he met Jane. Jane had 3 kids, twins, and a single kid. They got married when I was 12, but I would say even before that I felt like he prioritized her kids over me a lot. He would cancel plans with me if they wanted to do something and would either do the thing with them or force me to go and say it was even better than our plans, when for me it wasn't. Think going for a hike with me versus taking them to an indoor play area. Or seeing a movie with me versus the kiddie park. One more example is when I was given a ticket for a concert my dad and I both love. He was supposed to buy a ticket to come with me for some father/son time, but actually spent it on his youngest stepkid who wanted their room painted. He told me at the last minute and it hurt. There are other times stuff like this happened. He didn't show up at the hospital when I broke my arm because one stepkid was getting their tonsils out and wanted both him and his wife there. He told my mom over the phone to tell me he was proud of me for being brave and understanding. When I would bring this stuff up to him, he'd tell me it was natural to feel jealous of sharing his attention. That was all he would say. In 2019, he told my mom he would split the cost of a trip I wanted to go on with one of my clubs. Because she didn't have the money all by herself. Mom had her half saved. We told my dad he needed to pay. He said bills were tight and it was the twins' birthdays and the money needed to go on something for them. He told me we could do something as a family when the trip happened instead. I told him to forget it. That he was making it clear who was more important and I was going to stay with my mom where I actually mattered. Mom borrowed money to cover the other half of the trip. Dad told me he regretted making me feel less important and we were working on things, and then the graduation money was given about a month ago. Then a week ago he called and told me how one of the stepkids was being bullied, how bad of a time they're having it. And with that money they could help cheer them up for their birthday. I was pissed. I hung up. Then 2 days later I showed up at his doorstep, gave him the money and told him I didn't want to see him or his new family at my graduation. And that he had chosen who was more important, so he better stay out of my life. His stepkids and 2 younger bio kids were there. I didn't stick around. He called and told me we needed to talk it out like adults, and that I had hurt the kids' feelings. His wife freaked out on me, so I blocked her. About a week after my post, I planted a wall of blackberries and raspberries at the 2 sides of my garden facing the driveway. About 30 centimeters from the edge, so no overhanging branches. On the other side of the berry wall I planted lots stuff like strawberries and tomatoes. To reach the tomatoes and strawberries from the driveway you have either go through the fruit bushes or walk up to my house. Walk about 2 m along the side of the house and my windows and then walk into my actual garden. Not something you do by mistake. For about 2 weeks it was somewhat quiet, but I still found the kids on my driveway every single days. As far as I know they did not enter the garden and I hadn't noticed them walking around my house anymore. So I figured the bushes were working. About 1 week ago berry season started and my bushes are now full of raspberries and there's lots of strawberries as well. The neighbors noticed. First I caught the boys picking and eating raspberries, so I told them off and dropped them off at home, told their mom I caught them stealing. That's how I see it, even though it's fruit, and that I'd call the cops next time. She huffed and told me to grow up, but took the boys inside anyway. After that it was quiet up until yesterday afternoon, when I went out for a while and found the dad and his 2 sons right in the middle of my garden when I returned, clearing my bushes and plants. I didn't even confront them, just called the cops from a distance as they hadn't noticed me yet and started filming them after making the call. Luckily 2 cops showed up after 10 minutes or so, and they confronted the neighbor as they were still picking berries. They told them they were trespassing and that the berry picking was in fact considered stealing and that I could press charges. For the first time I noticed a bit of fear in my neighbor. He was having trouble finding his words and kept looking back at his house, I guess hoping his wife would show to yell at the cops. They all went inside with the cops, so I just went home as well. After a while the cops came by and asked me if I wanted to press charges. I asked them if they felt like they scared the neighbor enough to stay away. I got a small smile and yes, about him, but the wife had just kept shouting at them and her husband about the little living next door. I told them no for now, asked them if I'd be allowed to get an extra camera set up on the wall between my garden and the road, to cover the entire front garden plus driveway. They said that's allowed as long as it's on my side of the wall. So, now I'm getting an extra camera installed. One neighbor knows I'm done messing around, but his wife isn't there yet, and if I ever catch any of them again, the cops will be called and possible charges will follow.